Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Master of None podcast. I'm your host, as always, Stephen Murphy, joined by the two usual rugby crew here of Sam and Westy. Before we go anywhere, Sam, I think we have to bring attention to, a momentous occasion. We are honoured to be joined by Westy, who played for the Ballina senior team this weekend, gone for the first time ever. So congratulations to you, Westy, on your senior debut, not debut, debut.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations to you.
I have played for the first before, but
doesn't matter.
We were reclassed as a senior club, so it was technically my first senior rugby game.
So
nice.
Yeah, congrats. The fact that you're here, I thought you'd quit the podcast almost immediately.
And now that I'm technically semi-professional,
yeah. Are you technically? Yeah, you're after Niall Murray. You're like our second professional rugby player on the podcast. So
yeah, that's it.
Appreciate you, man.
Bringing some credibility to this podcast.
We've had Tig Leader on the podcast. He's an international.
Speaking of Tig Leader, possible NFL kicker soon. Did you see his NFL kicking videos? Oh my god!
I did actually. Yeah.
I actually DM'd him. I was like, "Is this a piss take, or are you actually trying to like?" He goes, hey, "If a move comes up, I'll be interested." I was like, "Yeah, obviously, you're being a millionaire." But so we'll keep an eye on that because we'll get him back on if he does. But yeah, we're here to chat about rugby, not just Westy's incredible debut at the weekend, but there's two semi-finals on in the European Champions Cup. We'll start with Saracens and Racing. I think basically we expected this game to be a bit of not a classic is probably not the way to put it, but better than it was. But at least one thing we can say for sure is Saracens are dead. Another round of applause, please. Another round of applause. They're done. They're finally in the championship, in the ground. And good riddance to them. The bad guys finally lost. So I'm happy about that. But Westy, this game, it just was a bit flat, wasn't it? It didn't really get going like we thought it would.
Yeah, I saw the first 10 minutes of it and then I had to go to my match. So I actually watched it back afterwards knowing the result. And yeah, it was kind of hard to watch, wasn't it? Like there was patches of really flat play. I mean, that's kind of the Saracens' game plan. It was similar to what we saw against Leinster, where they try and kind of kill the rugby being played and build ahead with their lead. And look, it nearly worked for them. Again, I just think probably having to make a few changes too early on probably hurt them going forward. Even like Racing weren't really able to create much early on. Finn Russell was quite quiet for the first half of the game. Usually we see him create a lot more. I think that was Saracens' game plan, was just to kind of limit the amount of rugby Racing could play.
This is what Saracens do. They sort of drag you down. Not drag you down to that level. That's a bit insulting to Saracens, but they stop you doing what you do well. But like Racing didn't help themselves a lot in that first half. They were very sluggish. There was a lot of sloppy knock-ons and sloppy kind of penalties given away. They really targeted Teddy Toma in that first half with a couple of high balls, and he didn't react very well to it. I thought Zebo was quite solid under the high ball for most of the game. When they targeted him, but they definitely went after it. Some smart play as well, like they'd put up an up and under on Teddy Toma, he'd be knocked on the ground, and if Saracens got the ball straight back to do a lovely little kind of grubber, or not a grubber, but like a small box kick over the top in the position where he should be. Just smart kind of rugby play from them. But Sam, what did you think of the first half? Kind of just general sloppiness, or was it just Saracens sticking to their game plan?
I think it was kind of a mix of both. I think that it'd be harsh to call it sloppy because I think that they were just trying things that weren't coming off as opposed to sloppy. I think that's kind of been a feature of the French teams so far in both tournaments. You've seen that they've actually just been trying to play a bit more expansive, a bit looser. And like people would describe Toulouse's display against Ulster the other week as sloppy or loose, but Racing were just trying the same thing. And then it comes good towards the end, but at the start it can't come good towards the end unless you persevere with it from the start, and they did. I thought Finn Russell, it wasn't coming off for him, but he was trying things. He was moving around. It was definitely a game plan. There was definitely a decision made to try and focus on just putting the defence on the back foot, because they tried that chip in like the 9th or 10th minute, and then it came off at the end. He didn't give up on something that has definitely been discussed or something that he'd seen. I thought some of the Racing players took a bit of time to get into it. And Saracens did their best to kind of stop it, and Saracens did their best to just keep themselves ahead by more than a score. I think Saracens also let it slip towards the end. I think when it got to the very end of the game, there were probably one or two Saracens decisions just didn't come off for them. and they let Racing get into it. And then, obviously there was a wondrous piece of skill by Finn Russell and Vakatawa, and then Finn Russell to follow up and aim off the score like this. It was unlucky for Saracens. I know you don't really like to say unlucky because you don't like them, but I think on the whole the game was Saracens there for the taking, and then Racing just kept themselves in it until such a time where they decided to have that moment of magic.
Yeah, I think the highlight of the first half had to be, though, Nigel Owens calling a use it penalty. We gotta, use it. We got one. It took a while, but it was. He did. Your man, I can't think of the name of the scrum half at the moment, but he took forever. In fairness, it was it was Racing, Ibrahim, whatever. Ibrahim.
Yeah.
He did take forever, and it was finally called. So fair play to Nigel Owens for that. But Racing going to the break, obviously 9-6 up, but definitely anyone's game at that stage. And then in the second half, Saracens, I feel like they upped their intensity a lot. Their line speed very much increased. And then they usually, if they win a penalty, they're all screaming and jumping around and, slap each other in the back, which definitely would annoy your opponent or get in their head. So they do that on purpose. But I thought Maitland, I thought was incredible for Saracens. He made some incredible tackles and defensive plays. He was really good. But I think on the Racing side, we have to highlight Donnacha Ryan was, I thought, very impressive throughout the game. And I think we should really touch on him because there's a lot of, I think, talk going back and forth. Was Munster let him go or he wanted to leave Munster? According to him, I think it was, there was contracts were the same, but he wanted basically, try something new. And I think we said, Sam, before, I don't think he was very much in Schmidt's plan going forward or at that time. So incredible for him to be, 12 years apart from his Munster title winning team to be now back in the final with Racing again, which is, incredible. So, Westy, what do you think about Donnacha Ryan's performance?
Yeah, I think even in the first half, I think Racing were really good defensively, and I think that was kind of driven forward by Donnacha Ryan. Like, man is just a workhorse for them. Anytime you see him play, like, he's hitting rucks that he has no business hitting, I think Ireland were unlucky to lose him when we did. We kind of lost him at a time where we were losing our big second. We're kind of looking for the next generation second rows that we didn't really get. I think Paul O'Connell had just retired and Donnacha Ryan went to France. We had Henderson there and we had a couple of options then coming through, maybe even Quinn Rue perhaps, who's had a horrible time of it with injuries. I don't know. I don't know if it was as you said, I don't know if it was a case of him being lost, as opposed to just him. You can't hold it against him wanting to get a change in from Munster. Maybe the residential rule needs to be examined. I heard Alan Quinlan talking about it earlier, and I do agree that if you get rid of it, the floodgates will open. Like, why would you? If there was no incentive like that to stay in Ireland, why wouldn't you go to France and make double the money? So it's definitely an interesting topic. I just think I don't think the door should be shut. I think didn't Wales used to, maybe they still do, like once you have 60 caps, you can go abroad and still be selected, something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice middle ground.
Yeah.
Put some parameters around it. But coming into this game, Saracens, 9-point kind of swing in the first 10 minutes, second half. They were 3 points down, 3 penalties from Alex Good. They're back up to 6 points up. They're just doing enough, as you said, Sam, to kind of keep nudging ahead. Racing are trying stuff, but just isn't coming off, whether it's just sloppiness or Saracens kind of, sniffing it out. And then Saracens nearly scored a try with Lewington. And I still don't know how, after watching it back twice, how he didn't score this try. It's like, does he try and be smart with it? Or does he trip? I don't think he trips.
No, he goes down on the ball to gather it. Whereas first thing you would say is kick it on and keep running. Or try and pick it up. I don't know why he goes to ground.
He had enough time to slow down and pick it up. But, incredible missed opportunity. I don't think... Maybe he just didn't realise what was around him. I don't know. But it was such a missed opportunity for them. Sam, did you... mental?
Yeah, I think when I watched it the first time, I was thinking, it looks like he slipped. But then when you look back at it, it's actually, it's like Westy said, he's gone to kind of gather the ball. Maybe to try and just do the, in your mind when you think like, I'm in a final, we're looking like we could win it, or we're in a semi-final, we're looking like we could win it, do the smart thing, keep possession. And he's probably just caught in two minds then, and that fucks up both opportunities for him. Playing your average mid-season game with less on the line, Does he kick it on and follow on? Yeah, probably. But it definitely is going to play on the poor chap's mind now that that's his missed opportunity. That's the opportunity of the team down the drain because of what happened in the end, So you got to feel sorry for him. Like, there's been times when we've all made mistakes that, have far less ramifications, and you still dwell on them for weeks. You'd be in the shower the next morning going, why the heck did I do that? And then, like, for it to happen on such a stage when there's such an opportunity and had such opportunities, it's really devastating. But I just think probably caught between two minds.
Well, Westy, as a fellow professional rugby player like Lewington now,
Hold on, I'm just a semi-professional.
Sorry, professional.
I'll get there. Just give me a year or two.
Yeah, exactly. If that goes over, obviously the game's over. I think at that stage, Racing aren't making their comeback, but the Racing get back, turn the ball over. Vakatawa really comes into this game the last 10 minutes. He makes some amazing breaks, and his strength is just ridiculous. But we have to talk obviously about the Finn Russell chip to Vakatawa. This is just incredible. It's incredible for so many different reasons. The balls to try this when you're 3 points.
Yeah, I was pregnant after it. That's pretty incredible.
yeah. I told my girlfriend, I was like, we have to break up because I don't find anything attractive anymore apart from Finn Russell's chip through, because if the balls to try it, it's not even off a set piece. It's just like general run of play. And I've seen O'Driscoll break it down on his Instagram actually, and he was saying it looks like he's only told Vakatawa this. He doesn't tell. Well, this is what he speculates, but the rest of the guys who are there, they don't. It doesn't look like by their body language that they know what's happening because none of them go to chase it with him. They stay back as if it's going to come round the back to them. So if that's even the case, it's even more incredible.
But I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily a call. Finn Russell plays the way he plays so well. It's like the likes of Vakatawa playing with him week in, week out. You can kind of get on sync. And if Russell sees it, maybe there's been some sort of thing that they've looked at in training. And if Russell sees it, Vakatawa might be seeing the same thing and know that it's on. Like, it might not necessarily be a call that they're unaware of. It might be playing off the cuff. Russell is so good at playing, like, that kind of just heads up, just play what's in front of your rugby. And if someone as talented as Vakatawa outside you and they're playing and training week in, week out, and they've decided that if they see the rush defense like that, the chip is on, Vakatawa runs that line and the chip's not on, it just goes out behind him for a spot, and that's fine. That's still a great, great move by Russell. So I don't know if there's necessarily something that Russell has said to Vakatawa, but actually just something that they've both seen. And then, for Russell to do and execute it the way he does, Vakatawa to kind of be able to bring it in after fumbling it. But then for Russell to follow up, like, every other out half in World Rugby, barring maybe Richie Mwanga, is congratulating themselves on how sexy their chip was, turning around and like looking at the coaches. And Russell is there, like I think he's putting down a marker for being your Lions out half. Like he's playing such a nice brand of rugby. He's playing with good quality players when he's playing at Racing, so we can see what he can do with quality players outside him. And, you're playing against the likes of South Africa next year if it does go ahead. You want a player doing that sort of thing. You don't want someone who's liable to get a yellow or red card straight away. You want someone playing with their heads up rugby, chips through, making everyone guess. Like, it was so good to watch. And I was so impressed that when I watched it back, he was the one that got the return pass and then gave off the pass again. Like, because if that was me, like, I'd be like signing autographs there midway through the game.
Yeah. Well, what's also incredible is Vakatawa switches the ball in his hand in like a split second. Like, he gets it in his left and he sees someone's coming in, switches to the right like instantly so that he can get off the offload. And then Imhoff's line as well. He's come from a long way away. He spots it too, and he's there on Finn Russell's. By the way, Finn Russell's pass to Imhoff was dicey.
I think
shoulder.
Yeah, but I think that's because Imhoff is almost overrunning him, and Finn Russell wants to make sure it's not a forward pass. Like, Imhoff needs to almost be a couple of inches back, just like they're side by side. So if you're giving that pass, it has to be back shoulder. Like, I know it looks dicey, but it's probably smarter to do that than to pass it to his hands and get called for the forward pass and ruin that. Like,
it was incredible. Westy, what do you think of the move?
I think, as you say, as Sam said, we've said about Finn Russell before, where he kind of just plays on the edge of insanity and kind of just is given that freedom in Racing as well because they have so much firepower. It's great hands from Vakatawa. It's great reaction from the guys who see that they've broken the line to hit those hard lines and be available. I think it's a sign of great ends, like we saw it with Alex Good last week. For his try, he gives a pop off inside or to the outside, and I can't remember who the receiver is, but he stays on the inside shoulder and tracks, and then ends up having the ball come back to him and gets the try. And I think that really is the standard of out half that you need to have, and I think it's something that's been shouted at players all across the board now, is to stay in the game after you've given the ball. And like, I think Finn Russell just really enjoys playing with Racing. I think he wants to be as involved as he can. So he gives that pass to Vakatawa, and he's running along. He's happy enough, you know.
Yeah,
it was
I think
a
though,
great insight.
Gatland watching that isn't like, oh, that's what I want my fly have. Like, I think that sort of stuff scares Gatland. No, for Lions.
Scared of how arousing he finds it.
Well, yeah, but like, if that doesn't come off, you know, that's the problem with Russell. It's like, yeah, he's fantastic at that sort of stuff, but he also will try that at the most important part of the game. When it came off this time, which was fantastic, and it won them the game. But what if it doesn't, and Saracens just gather the ball back and play out the clock? You know, you
say what if it doesn't? You say what if it doesn't? But how many times have we stood here or sat here on the podcast and said, "Oh, Finn Russell, that didn't work out. What a stupid mistake." Like, it works out for him more times than it doesn't because of how talented he is, and because he has the ability to tailor his play to the teams that he's playing beside. He's not trying that for Scotland against Italy in the 78th minute in the middle of the Six Nations. He's trying,
because they're already down 21 points.
He's trying for Saracens in the semi-final, or for Racing against Saracens in the semi-final of the Champions Cup, because he's that good a player that he knows who he's playing with. He has a rapport with them, and that's what I think. Like, you know, it probably, like you said, it probably does scare Gatland, and he probably won't be the first choice Lion, but if he keeps doing stuff like that week in, week out, there's going to be pressure on Gatland to have him there. And when Farrell gets sent off in the second minute of the first game, there's going to be an opening spot for an out half, like, so.
Yeah, but he won't miss the second game because he's doing some charity work, so it's all right. Yeah, exactly. But Racing, you know, hold on, march on to the final to face Exeter, which we'll talk about now. Racing, be fair, was going to that final against Exeter?
I don't know. I think last week I said, you know, I didn't think Exeter would get through. I thought Toulouse were going to be just that bit too talented for them. But I had said that, you know, Exeter are runaway league leaders in the Premiership at the moment, really capitalising on the Saracens' fall. They've built up their team so smartly over the last few years. You know, I think I read somewhere today that they've 70% of players are homegrown. You know, they've got a culture there that they're trying to produce. They have local lads like Simmons brothers coming through, and I think that this is going to mean a lot for Exeter, the way they've done it, the chance for a league and cup double, like the chance to really give two fingers up to Saracens, because, like, you know, is it Tony Rowe, the owner of Exeter, has been really, really vocal about kind of the, like, how disappointed at being cheated out of a few leagues they've been against Saracens the last couple of years. So, you know, this is an opportunity, a cup and league double for them is a huge, huge opportunity to really give two fingers to Saracens as Saracens go down into the championship, which might not even be happening next year. That's something that's been touted as well. Like, financially, the championship looks like it's unviable. So, you know, for Exeter, this is a huge opportunity to really just go like, okay, Saracens era over. This is the era of, like, clean living. This is the era of Exeter. They're doing it right, you know. So it's a big chance. And I don't know if Racing will definitely be favourites. I think it's going to be very, very close.
Yeah, it'll be tight, all right. But we'll get on to the Exeter-Toulouse game. This was really the battle of different play styles. You have Exeter, who are very much like a well-drilled machine, and then you have Toulouse, who are, you know, flashy, flamboyant, sort of off-the-cuff kind of play styles. So, unfortunately, I always like to watch the flashy, off-the-cuff, flamboyant play style, but that lost this weekend to the well-oiled machine. But Toulouse started well. Like, if you had just watched the first 10 minutes, you'd be like, Toulouse is going to win this fairly comfortably. They were all over Exeter for the first 10 minutes. Like, they were dominant. They were pressurizing Exeter. Exeter were holding on for a lot of the first couple of minutes. It actually kind of, Exeter couldn't handle Toulouse's line speed was incredible. They were shooting up early, and Exeter just didn't know how to deal with it, which again is, you could say that's a flaw of being such a well-oiled machine, is that when something like that happens, you don't know what to do. But I thought a major turning point in this first half especially was, like, around the 20-minute mark, Toulouse were camped on Exeter's try line for a long, long time. And they flipped it out wide to Ugier, and he just couldn't get over it. They held on Exeter. I think that was a massive I think settled Exeter down a bit. they kind of got more into their game style then, and they kind of were like, okay, they've thrown a lot at us here, but we're still fine. So I think that kind of helped them in a long way. But Sam, your first kind of half of this, the first 20 minutes of this game, anyway, did you agree? Do you think Toulouse looked the better side?
Yeah, I thought Toulouse came out the traps, and if you'd watched any of the last couple of weeks, you were going, oh no, like Toulouse really look on it. They look like they want to play the ball. Like I'm gonna, every time we see him play, I get a little sadder now. Pitaki was just on fire. Like his link up play is just sensational, and his running ability is unbelievable. And like Ches and Colby as well. Like you just couldn't look past them in the first few minutes. But I think what Exeter did was they just weathered the storm, kind of just like the old football or soccer saying, where you just let them play in front of you, just sit deep and just kind of let them do that for a while. I think Toulouse, it was very flashy, it was very enjoyable to watch, and they were running some hard lines, but Exeter just got the ball, got themselves down there, used them all, used the strength, slowed it down a little bit, and that's what allowed them to come back into the game then. And then there was a break about 10 minutes to go in the first half that it led to the try. Who was it that made the break? It was Tom O'Flaherty, and he broke in through into the 22, and then Williams got the try. And I think those are the moments for Exeter. They were just like, Toulouse can play as much as they want. We have our game plan. We believe in our game plan. We're going to play it that way, and we're going to capitalize on the chances that are created by Toulouse being so kind of loose and unstructured. And unfortunately, you're not getting to see Toulouse in the final because they're probably a more enjoyable team to watch. But I thought Exeter were really, really good, and I was really impressed with how they went about their game plan, how they kind of let Toulouse do their thing instead of trying to null and void it, instead of trying to stop them at source and coming up quickly and slowing it down. They just let them play in front of them and then played with the ball when they got it. So
yeah, I agree. They did a pretty good job at managing Cheslin Colby. They kind of seemed to always have 2 or 3 players around him at any one time. They did a much better job at not isolating, say, Stuart Hogg out there, or like Ulster seemed to do with Stockdale. So credit them for doing that. The Jack Noel dropping the knees in on the player, I kind of want to highlight this because you see this a lot, but this one was especially unnecessary because your man was so in the clear, and it was had touched over before Noel had even kind of lunged at him, which I don't like to see, obviously. But just want to touch about Exeter, Westy. We've said before about Ulster or Munster sometimes not taking their points when they have the opportunity and how it kind of hurt them. Exeter did that this week. They didn't take easy kickable points, and it worked for them. They ended up converting, that kind of penalties into actual tries. 39th minute right before halftime. That's normally a very easy decision to go right, it's stroke of halftime, let's kick this ball over. But they went with the tap and go, and they got the try, and they got the reward. It's very fickle, isn't it? If that doesn't work, we're kind of abusing them again, saying that was a poor decision. But this time it worked. What did you think about that?
I think it came from them backing themselves physically. I know you were saying that their defense was maybe a bit shell shocked by the initial kind of onslaught from Toulouse, but at the same time, nobody's shying away from any hits there. And I even think that the physicality that Exeter did bring in defence is one of the reasons Toulouse took the points early. Toulouse in other games would have been happy to go for especially the second penalty, maybe when they really are being dominant, to go for the corner and go for the try. But I think they were feeling the onslaught, the work rate from the Exeter defence, and Exeter's working as a unit. I think Exeter, what was in it at half time, it was it was a pretty close game. They were pretty happy with how they were matching up to Toulouse. As you rightly said, they had kept Huget out. They'd won the following scrum, and then a penalty further down the pitch. They'd really turned the game on their heels before their first try. I think they just backed themselves. I think, as Sam said, they believe in their system, and I think they had every reason to, really. And I think they were willing to accept that risk of a couple of points. And the difference, they knew they'd come out at the second half ready to fight again.
Yeah, as they go in half-time, 14 points up to 11. So instead of being 11-9 down, they go up 14-11 because they had the balls to go for the try and actually execute, which is a massive momentum swing and a mental advantage going into that second half after doing that. And it kind of showed straight off. Exeter won a couple of big penalties. They won a lot of scrum penalties, which is we've seen in the last couple of European games. Scrum, if you win the scrum, you're not far off winning the game. It seems to be a very important part of the the game, and Exeter were just relentless at the breakdown. Every ruck there was no easy rucks for Toulouse. Everything was contested. Everything was slow. It was a pain, and they seem to love the physicality. Sam, that seems to be the kind of their game plan as well, just to get stuck in.
Yeah, I was impressed. I thought, it's not often you see games where you're complimenting front rows for like their open play work. A lot of the time you're like, oh yeah, scrum was great, but I thought the front row were regularly popping up with big stops from the post and the pillar and open field tackles. Johnny Hill was unbelievable. Like Stuart Hogg as well. I think I love Stuart Hogg as a player. The move to Exeter seems to have suited him well. I heard an interview with him recently, and he was talking about how much better a headspace he is. But there was like times in that game where he was support running. Like I sent one to you guys. He was support running from absolute no man's land because he was just looking to get on the ball. I think they were all working for each other, and it's like I spoke about it earlier about how they've gone about accumulating a team the right way. There's plenty of young academy players, and there's 5 or 6 academy players are playing at the weekend for them. Like that breeds a really good atmosphere, and that's why these players are playing for each other, and that's why, like Westy said, they're willing to put their bodies on the line. Like Toulouse were playing the ball, they were playing a lot, and they were trying to keep the ball alive, and the Exeter lads just were relentless in there, following it and breaking it down, stopping it when they had to, tackling hard when they had to, rucking, counter rucking. It was a joy to watch for kind of those old school purists. Like we go into next week, kind of wishing you'd see Toulouse playing Racing 92, because that would just be like who can offload the most in 80 minutes. But no, I think Exeter were the winners of the game, and their work rate is you can't question. I'd love to see stats on rucks hit by different players and stuff, because I'd say a lot of them would be high up there in terms of the amounts like records for this season. Like they were definitely put in a massive shift, and they've been playing competitive rugby for the last few weeks. The Premiership is all over the place in terms of who can play where and like what team is playing. They might be starting the second string 15 one week, but they're playing every 4 days for the last few weeks. So they really are probably coming to the end of a very, very tiring period.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to note one of the best like try line tackles I've ever seen. Did you see Kano's tackle like in the middle of that? Oh my God, he stopped. Like it looks like a surefire try, and Kano just comes out of nowhere and stops it. That was incredible. Exeter eventually do break through there, but Toulouse come back up fairly quickly after that and are camped as well, sort of on Exeter's try line, which would have been massive, to get back into the game. But Simmons does incredible work and kind of turns the ball back over. And then a few minutes later, then final nail in the coffin, then the other Simmons scores a try on the 70th minute. And then that's kind of game over. Toulouse get one back, but at that stage, it's more of a consolation than anything else. But yeah, I agree with you, Sam. Exeter totally deserved the win. They just were relentless with Toulouse and battered them down and bet them down until that was it.
Just reading a stat here, I thought it was really interesting, because Exeter came in the second half and got the win, in the second half. But they were playing against Toulouse into the breeze, and Toulouse in the entire tournament up to that point had conceded fewer than 20 points in the second half of all games combined. Like that's they're a good second half team. It's not like they're one of those teams that puts up 50 points and then falls apart and lets you get back into it but gets the win. Like they're no mugs. Like, so fair play to Exeter for being relentless. And I think three of the tries were from really solid forward mauling work, squeezed in over the line, and that's tiring to play against. Like, Toulouse, they're playing in the French league. They're used to having the ball a lot, like Leinster would be. Playing against that's not easy. And fair play to Exeter for going with it and for not being flashy. For doing what Munster did in the 90s and the early 2000s. And it was like, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to win us this game. And that's what they stuck to it. And fair play to them, because
Sam, we will never compliment someone for not being flashy on this podcast, okay? That is the opposite. That we're not going to compliment someone for not being flashy, right?
We want all sizzle, no steak.
All sizzle, exactly.
We want Kobe running to touch all day.
I don't care if you lose 60-0. I want to see some offloads. You know what I mean? Give it to me. Give me all the turns.
Exeter have that little moment of like, they're not that flashy, but then Simmons had a great break, to get that try. Like, I was chuffed for him because himself and his brother are playing for their local team, like their boyhood team, and that's the great stories. And we get a lot of that with Connacht. We get a lot of local lads playing for the team and stuff. But these are two lads that they're putting themselves in contention for England or for whoever else, Lions and all that in the long run. And they're doing it with the team that they grew up supporting, the team they grew up through the academy. So it's great to see, like, They can have their flashy moments. They can have Stuart Hogg every once in a while. They don't have to be too flashy, but no, I'll compliment them this time. I'll go back to not complimenting on flashy play next week.
That's what I like to hear. I'll allow it this once. Westy, preview kind of the final. What do you think, and who do you think will be favourites in your mind?
Well, look, I got both games wrong last week, so I don't know how.
I got the Racing prediction right.
Look, I think there's no doubt Racing are going to be favourites. They've obviously invested pretty heavily. I think their owners come out and said that his goal is to win a Champions Cup, and that translates to
the fourth final.
Yeah, I think it's either third or fourth. I think they've been in 3 before. So it's essentially, basically, my point I'm trying to make is essentially trying to buy a Heineken Cup. Look, Chelsea, I think
basically.
Yeah, I think based on the weekend's performances, Exeter were far better, far smarter game plan. I think Exeter's composure can't be questioned. Like they, as Sam said, like boys online for each other, sticking to the game plan. I think if they bring the same attitude to the weekend, they'll win for sure. I do think Racing are favourites. Racing have just a few more attacking threats, but it could come down to a similar thing. One of the problems I thought for Toulouse was they were trying to use their danger men a little bit too much. They were trying to push the ball onto Kobe. Anton Dupont maybe once or twice trying to go himself a little bit too much, because they don't necessarily have that like tangible team structure that I think Exeter demonstrated so well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way like Saracens gave Racing a lot of problems, and I think Exeter can give them the same kind of problems, but even more issues. So I think it's going to be tough for Racing to kind of do what they do well against that Exeter team. So I'd be looking towards, I think, Exeter. I think I don't. Whoever wins, I don't dislike either team. It would be a great story for Exeter to win. As you said, a lot of local lads, a lot of lads who actually have been there for years and stuff. So I'd have no issues with that. And then obviously the Racing, a couple of Irish, you've Zebo, Dunica Ryan, Prendergast, Irish connection there, which is always good to see. So it's a win-win for I'd say a lot of people watching this game.
Rugby would be the real winner.
And hopefully sportsmanship, hopefully sportsmanship. Do we want to touch on, before we go, the just breaking Cheetahs news, Sam, in South Africa? I haven't really got too much into it yet, Sam. Do you know much about it yet?
Yeah, I read an article there that was tweeted by the Cheetahs official Twitter. It seems they're gone from the Pro 16 as it's going to be now, and the 4 teams have been voted to go in ahead of them. But it said that they're assessing their options. I think they still feel they have a claim to one of the spots and could potentially take the South African Rugby Union to court over it. This was the talk last week, because they're still entitled to their spot is their stance. But the South African Rugby Union have now voted for the 4 teams that have been kicked out essentially of the Super Rugby for whatever reason that was. If it was due to time zones, to do with like financial viability, whatever it was, they're reallocating them into the Pro 14, Pro 16 as it's going to be. I think it's a bit of a disgrace personally. I think Cheetahs have really added to the league when no other league seemed to want them. They were gotten rid of out of the Super Rugby, and now they had the opportunity to go to the Pro 14 or Pro 12 and into the 14 at the time, and have really added to it. And I think, unfairly so, the Kings are also probably dead now. They decided that they'd take a year off, but they added to it as well, albeit the results weren't as good. Those were exciting games. There was getting a bit of kind of harmony between some of the Cheetahs fans, the Kings fans, the Connacht fans and stuff online, and it's a real big shame, I think, to see them go. I don't think it's particularly fair, and I don't think it's a good look really on the Pro. It's Pro 16 now.
Pro number. Let's just call it the Pro number.
The Pro League. I don't think it's
Pro League. Yeah.
I don't think it's a good look on the Pro League to be like allowing that to happen. This is a team that had invested in their league. This is a team had contributed to their league, had played very well, had upset teams, had played, and had been beaten by teams in different games. And I think that's a bad look, because, these South African teams might just be ousted for an American team if American rugby takes off, or the Italians might be gone for a Russian team or a Spanish team. And it's going to become so hard to have any sort of actual affiliation and actual kind of desire to beat teams. And if they keep changing year in, year out that way without any sort of promotion, relegation and structure, I don't care how Munster do against the Stormers or the Bulls. Like that's meaningless to me now. But I developed a little thing with the Cheetahs for 2 years and 3 years, and I think I just think it's a big shame, and I think it's bad kind of from the South African Rugby Football Union to just replace them, like, you know, essentially give them a death notice unless they can find another league somewhere to play in that will allow them to keep their professional rugby players. And I think it's bad on the Pro 14 to allow it.
Yeah, Westy, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think a decision does nothing for developing rugby anywhere. I know South Africa's not a developing rugby market; it's a very well-established market. But just telling a team after 3 years of work that you're not worthy doesn't help anybody. Like, it's just really confusing because they're about to launch into like an internal. There's Super Rugby. I think it's going to be called Super Rugby Unlocked or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's like going to be the 5 plus 3. I think they're doing the 8.
It's the 4 teams plus Cheetahs, a team called the Pumas, another team called the Grigos or something. I don't know exactly how to say it. I don't know how the word's pronounced. But like
offensive, Westy. Offensive.
Okay. I don't care. There's a very easy solution that, like, so essentially it's a version of their Curry Cup that they have every year between their internal provinces, and like the solution here is just why not have like the top 4 teams that finish in that 7 go into the pro league. Do you know, like, what's going to happen? I was reading an article before this, and the journalists were saying, like, what's going to happen if Cheetahs win that league? Like, then you're going to have like 4 inferior teams going into the Pro 16. Like, it's not a fair way of doing it at all. I think the best thing to do for South African rugby, at least in the first couple of years, is to do some sort of they have their own internal promotion relegation, where their 4 teams in the pro number will change based on their internal rankings.
Yeah, that would be the fairest thing to do, because like I don't you know, I'm not saying that we're not benefiting week in, week out from seeing the 4 South African teams coming into it. You know, they're great teams with World Cup winners and, you know, really stacked kind of franchises. It's just they've been ousted by the Anzac, the New Zealand and Australian teams. That league never made sense. It was dying from day one. You know, it had a heyday and then it slowly started to kind of, the viewership was down, the sponsorship was down. South African rugby was in a bad place in terms of its finances. It was in a good place in terms of its ability. You know, they've won the World Cup. They've been World Cup finals in the last 10, 12 years. But I just think that, you know, deciding to join into the European League that's already got a South African team, that this is essentially giving it a death sentence. There is no other pro league for these players to go in. These players have contracts. There's money already there. The sponsorship in agreement. Like, what's to happen to them? They're going to have to find new teams, or they're going to have to take wage cuts. They should have been committed to the way that they had been, you know, and there should have been some sort of qualification process, like Westy was saying, you know, going in, having a promotion relegation. Like, this is potentially 4 trips to South Africa, however they want to divide that up between the different conferences. Like, how are the Italian teams going to cope with that? How are we as Connacht going to cope with that financially? Like, it's such a mental thing to think. I don't think the league personally is going to benefit from having 16 teams. I think it's already a bit watered down, and, you know, I get really excited about playing the Interpros and probably Glasgow, and then other than that, the win against Dragons is always nice, and the game against Edinburgh can be very tough. But like, you find it hard to keep getting into games and to have rivalries build up naturally and stuff. So I think it's a shame, and I don't think it's the right move personally.
Yep, that's fair enough. We'll see how, if they do take them to court. I think they are, but we'll see how that unfolds. But okay, lads, we'll leave it. I know Sammy to go, so we'll leave it there. As always, thanks for joining. We'll be back next week with some pro number coverage. We'll see how that goes. And I
really wish that if I could, I'd choose this moment to unveil that I was secretly wearing a Cheetahs jersey the whole time.
Oh, that would have been good.
But I don't have a Cheetahs jersey.
You cheated us out of that moment, Westy.
Oh, well, I think we'll have our 3rd round of applause of the day. Well on, Sam.
See, where are these sound effects? You should be adding these in post.
I know, I need to get a soundboard.
You need to get like an early 2000s air horn.
Oh, if I could get a crowd booing, so then every time Westy talks, I could just be like, boo, you suck. That would be
Sorry,
great.
I couldn't hear you down there with your 1 junior rugby cap.
Oh, excuse me, I played more than once. Twice. All right, boys, appreciate it as always, and we'll chat to you next week.
Talk to you later, boys.
Boys in.